Welcome to How to Ride a Roller Coaster, where we talk with entrepreneurs on building businesses and brands. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, and don't forget, smash that like button. What's going on?
Oh, just writing a lot of FSA related paperwork right now. But other than that, things are very good. We're growing. We're growing, but there's paperwork comes with growth. I think someone once said that.
Yes, and everybody that I talk to, it feels like paperwork is the thing that it's like, yeah, that's on the side of my desk. I'll get to it. It's my taxes. It's all this stuff. It's kind of the thing that we don't want to tackle all the time.
Normally, yes, and don't. The IRS is listening.
We'll edit
Just
that
kidding.
part out. Yeah.
Yeah, edit that part out. But like FSA and like all those sort of like flex spending healthcare things are so essential to what we do. And I was like, no, I will take that on. And as you can imagine, it's an insanely detailed process. And so like every time there's new paperwork or like the Stripe clearinghouse calls with like,
Yeah.
hey, we need this form, I like power back up into like hyper vigilance on that front. So I am actually anticipating tomorrow being the last day of paperwork on that. So I'm feeling pretty good, pretty celebratory
Well,
on that front. I
congratulations.
don't know
That's
how
another one to
I
check off the list.
it is. Speaking of lists of things, and yeah, I really have no idea how you celebrate that, but I will tell you that every moment of celebration we've had so far has come either like, well, I'm sitting in my pajamas or like, well, I'm at the grocery store. So I just assume it's going to be like at the
Pumping
grocery store.
gas,
So
right? Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. So with your
yeah.
background, really going from creative direction and all that, how did the mental health space part come? Like where did that pivot and segue really start?
I have been really working hard in the last almost decade now. Jeez, like, let's be honest, to really understand what I actually give a shit about, but what I also want to spend every day talking about, but what I was also comfortable with doing. And, I had long lists and thousands of journal pages and career coaches and all this stuff. And like, there is the sort of the flippant, like when you spend a lot of time in creativity, you see a lot of untreated mental health kind of stuff. And yeah, sure, that's part of it. But I just couldn't escape that as the area of interest that I had, where I was just like, I like reading about it. I like talking about it. I like annoying my therapist with questions about it. I like when I meet a new therapist, I like talking about it. And it's something that everyone has been affected by. So it
Yeah.
just makes sense. I think it took me a while from there to accept that even if what we do can be kind of like have some levity to it, I think a lot of it was accepting that it wasn't necessarily going to be like a funny haha thing, which is sort of just like a classic advertising person's hang up where it's like,
Sure.
wait, not everything can be like someone getting hit in the face with a pie all the time. Like that actually, I think that was probably more years was just accepting that fact than understanding that it was something that I really cared about and was interested in.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I feel, even on places like LinkedIn these days, like I follow the guy who's the CMO with Liquid Death, and all of their
Hmm.
their ad campaigns and all of that kind of stuff. But then you start to see other brands that kind of start to dip their toe into that style and want to kind of have that brand awareness and be known for that kind of thing, but they're using advertising and marketing in the same way as Liquid Death. It almost kind of feels like they're trying to piggyback a little bit and just kind of dip that side. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Liquid Death comes off very authentic because they've owned that space, or they've owned who
hmm
they are, and they've owned their brand, all that kind of stuff. Whereas all these others, whenever they dip that toe in, it makes them feel just completely inauthentic because their website probably feels very stuffy and corporate, and here's our about us page and that kind of thing. But then they put out an ad and you're like, well, that doesn't line
right.
up. So I think that's smart, really just trying to hone it back and really figure out who you guys are, talk genuinely and directly to the consumer, and understanding all of that and making sure that all of that is consistent across.
I mean, if I have to get up every day and talk about it and like bet my credit score on it and like drive around all day to meetings on it and like come home at 11 p.m. half the week because of it, I better be confident in talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, other that than I am living like a very protracted lie right now. I don't actually believe that.
Yeah.
And so, we haven't done any like brand marketing of any kind yet because we're still sort of in our we're post soft launch, pre hard launch. I don't know what you even call that next step.
Awesome.
And so we haven't done any like real brand campaign or real brand voice stuff. And it's like, I know we can create something spectacular there that's like honest and is me and is has a wryness or a cheekiness to it. But yeah, I mean, I would say that Liquid Death is the perfect example because it's like, those guys started their company well before me and they left advertising well before me. And I'll totally say straight up that like I definitely went through a period was like, can I liquid death mental health? And the answer is you pretty much cannot. And it's like it took me a good long while to accept that fact of like staring off into the sunset and like journaling and like I don't know. It's just like to find a voice that was authentic to me, that was like still absurdist, but like let people know that we focus on their care and
Yeah.
the quality of care is more important than brand voice for us. You know what I mean? Like,
For
I'm
sure.
totally happy to sacrifice any dreams I have of brand voice, masterful writing later for the sake of the care of our members. If any of them are watching this right now, like I don't want them to like spit their coffee out because I think I'm gonna like sacrifice their therapy experience because of that.
And so then that just kind of dovetails into Daniel the entrepreneur. I mean,
Hmm.
creative direction and everything else is one thing, but then jumping out and starting your own, that requires like we were talking about a little bit before we hit record tonight, that requires different thought processes, different mindset, different ups and downs. And that's why the whole name of this show is How to Ride a Roller Coaster. I feel like every entrepreneur out there can associate with that. And too many times we view all the negatives or all the down parts in our business as just that, as well, this part's not working. It must be me. It must be something I'm doing wrong. As opposed to it's all the things that I've learned along the way. And I have to have some of that downward momentum before I can start to hit that next spot going up. So
Yeah.
as you've started doing this, I mean, what have been some of those kind of sticking points? Because I mean, a lot of people that listen to this show are either maybe right behind where you are, like maybe still solopreneurs, so not quite with the team yet, or right in line with where you are. Like we have a small
Yeah.
team, and we're every day we've all got the do everything hat, so we're all running around with our hair on fire trying to get things done. So what have been some of those things that maybe some of those sticking points you've hit so far?
Let's talk about like the fundamentals of it, just like in the most neutral fashion. In that there's a positive and a negative here, and I think they're both totally apt. Let's start with the positive because I'm feeling good about the FSA paperwork thing.
Nice.
Um, is that you start to trust your judgment and like you start to listen to the voice in your head. Like I know that voice in your head as like I don't know, like a cultural or like television trope is like, oh, he's crazy or that. But your brain, especially if you're like me and you're 42, is like has been feeding you information about what you like for a considerable amount of time. And especially if you're creative, but even if you're not, like if you don't come from a creative background, it doesn't really matter. But like that voice is actually in there, like feeding you a lot of really good information and feedback about what you like, what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you should be doing, what's making you miserable on a daily basis. Um, and you really need to take some time to learn about that muscle and that voice in your brain. And that was probably the fundamental most important thing. Like, and that's a very positive growth experience because that starts with accepting that a lot of ideas and a lot of the first things you're going to think of are kind of small. And I mean that on every level. Like if you if you look at the and I have a list of and it's in chronological order of like ideas that were successful. There are like all the ones that are moderately not successful in there too, but it is at the very top of a long held Google Doc that has every idea that I've ever written down. And most of them are dumb. I'll be perfectly honest. But if you look at the list at the top of the 17 things that I created out of there that are successful, they're very small scale at the start and they just start to build unintentionally. Like I was not, this is not me like revealing some master plan to the world. It's just like, oh, you see that as you gain confidence in that judgment voice in your brain, that you'll be willing to try different things. You'll also be willing to ask people for more complicated help and more technical help and try to build different things. And, that started, I was reminded this morning randomly the very first thing on that list, which this is a very like 2012 thing, but like the copywriter that I was working with at the time, he and I had like a very corny advertising Tumblr that was a bear sitting at a picnic table, and he would like deliver shitty client feedback that people had said to us. And it was like moderately successful. Like it had like 1,000 followers on Tumblr, and like it was aggregated on College Humor, which again, like that's 2012 success. But it's like that was like that first little taste of like, oh, if you just kind of do what you want, like, and listen to the voice and just like make the thing as fast as possible, you're gonna prime that pump and prime that muscle. And that was like a really important lesson that I'm honestly still learning now. And it's like as the asks get more complicated, I have to like go back to that fundamental all the time. The negative, and I think this is equally important, and this sucks shit for everyone, is you need to see like 2 or 3 of your good ideas that you've been like holding precious to your chest for a long time, for a couple of years. Like, oh, I don't know how to do it. I don't know where to go. You just like see someone take it and run with it and like shine and get like hundreds of millions of dollars on it. And that happened to me twice. With 2 different things, and I'm happy to talk about at length what they are, but I'll just say that they are out there now. They're successful companies, and there are things that like I've annoyed my then fiance with, or like friends of like, no, what if I did this? And it's like, at the time I just didn't know how to ask. And after I saw the second one of those happen, I was like, I cannot let a third one happen. Like I was so you're not only are you bruised, but you're also made so weirdly confident in that moment. It's like you get punched in the face, but you also get the added ego boost of being like, see, I told you I was gonna get punched in the face. And it's like you knew that the idea was right. You just didn't act on it. But then you also see someone act on it is a very weirdly empowering but really hard to take an important lesson in this. It's like, I don't think there's a single entrepreneur out there that didn't experience that, where they like missed out on something and it powers them up. I'm sure that's like on the cutting room floor of Social Network or whatever, but it's like the part where he misses out on a previous idea. But for me, at least, that was like, I could not be fooled a third time on that front.
Were these ideas that were brought to life by people that were in the same stage as you, or were these ideas that like enterprise level companies like Microsoft put something out and you're like, oh, okay, I see. Well, they had the manpower to do it, but the idea was the same.
One required enterprise level assistance because it was a supplementary health insurance company for mental health. And at, I don't know, like 31 years old, and having been in advertising then for however many years, like 10 years at that point, I was like, I have no clue who to even start with to make that happen. The other one, while it didn't really go anywhere and CVS kind of pulled the funding on it, they repurposed a bunch of unused like optometry centers in some of their stores to become therapy offices that were like ultra affordable. It did not last very long. They did not fund it properly. They did not create a good experience around it. But when I saw the headline I mean, it was like right after we moved into the house that I'm sitting in right now. I was like sitting at this very desk and I saw like the press release of like, oh, CVS is putting $1 billion into funding this initiative. I like, if I could have like punched through, I don't know, pick the hardest surface in this house, I would have done it because I was like, oh, it happened the second frickin' time where like I got absolutely nailed on that. And I was like, I can't, I told myself and the heavens and my wife and anyone who would listen, like, I am not letting this happen a third time. Um, Absolutely not. Like, I committed to it right there and then, and minus the break to have a child, I did it. So here we
So
are.
were some of those hindrances not having the skill set? Like if it's, web development heavy or whatever the case, and like you mentioned the first time where it's like, oh well, I don't know who I would go to even ask for the help, or who I could go to maybe be a partner with me to try to build this thing. Were those some of the things with those first two ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that is always the issue. And it was an issue with both of them. I think it was also the assumption that given my background, like a somewhat DIY background, like going all the way back to, I don't know, elementary school, um, I assumed that the answer was like somewhere rattling around in my brain, or like I was going to discover it by reading the internet, or I was going to discover it by journaling, or like reading enough Harvard Business Review until it just like got forced out of my mouth. And that's just not how these things work. Like you got to start finding the technical people and the experts that will help you, and like just you need to round up your zealots, you know what I mean, and your wonks and stuff like that, and like find the people that are just like, yeah, I'll make a health insurance company with you. Let's do that. That sounds great. Um, and I learned that lesson well after the fact. That is, again, like that's still a lesson that I'm learning today, like with every stage of our growth.
And I like both of those caveats too. Especially the first one when it comes to trusting yourself. And like you said, you have all these years and all these experiences kind of built up. You know what's a good choice and a bad choice. You know the things that you like, the things that you're good at. So embrace those things and really put your time and your focus there. And I love that you kind of had them listed out, like tangibly listed out. Because I'm a visual person. Like if I see something that I can do it. Like even though there's a million to-do lists that I could, go online and do every day. If I'm one of those that I like write it down. I want to see the big check
Yeah,
beside it. It's that kind of stuff. And then
yeah,
the
I'm a
second
big.
part of, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Um, yeah, no, I'm a big fan of like post-it notes and having the like big, like the thermometer of fundraising kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like, sorry, but I interrupted there.
Yeah,
Continue.
no, I mean and the second part, yes, it's that to me that's always been the hardest one too. So really finding that group of people that want to help you do the thing that you want to do. And
Yeah,
and again, kind of segueing back into what we talked about beforehand was building that community. Whoever those people are in that space that you're in as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, continue to build that and cultivate that and start there when you're looking to try to find people to help you build it. Because there are people out there that are willing and ready to go do it. And I mean, I've had one or two of those before, probably not to the same scale, but something where you're like, man, I thought of that kind of thing. I mean, I had the same initial idea. Sure, they have a workforce of 50. It would have been a workforce of me and some contractor, but the end result was, in my mind, kind of similar to what their output was. So it's like that just kind of gives you a little bit of, yeah, I mean, I'm not that far off. I mean, the idea is there. It's, I mean, of course, putting in the work is what everything is, but the idea is there and you're in the right place and you're thinking in the right way. Um, and so where are you guys now? Like, so what are some of those next things that are on kind of that radar as you guys continue to grow? Cause you guys are what, 4 or 5 employees right now? I mean, so
yeah.
what's next? What comes next after you get to 4 and 5 employees and continue to build?
So we're in a really, I think, good but terrifying place, which is, we spent 6 months designing our curriculum, right, to make sure that the customer experience when they came in and had therapy with us was just a much better and much less dour than what they've probably experienced either in person or online or some measure of the two during the pandemic. Like no one, there's like a handful of people that could say that they've had like a genuinely positive therapy experience over the span of their life. So
Yeah.
we have, and I would say I'm not one of those people, uh, um, but we spent a lot of time working on that curriculum and what the customer experience is going to be and like mapping that out and sort of like understanding every step of that. So that was where we started. And that's obviously an ongoing process. And we 100% need to return to that. And that's part of why I'm going to talk about hiring at length, I'm sure. Um, and so we did a pilot after that, sort of uh, somewhat begrudgingly. And I think that kind of happened because I was maybe overly confident in what we were doing versus like the right kind of confident. And that pilot went super well when it went well. And there were plenty of hiccups as a soft launch pilot
Of
thing can
course.
be. Um, Everything from the air conditioning not working to losing leases to me having to like wrestle drunk people in front of the office to it's been a lot of stuff. But
I want
if
to
you
hear
look
more
at the
about that one for sure,
okay,
too.
okay. I don't condone my boxing instructor will tell you that the best position to be in for a fight is 5 blocks away, and I'm always like, that is a very good way of saying it.
That's a
So
good way to
this is
say
not me condoning anything other
it.
than that. Um, so like we went through a lot of that stuff, but the reality is that coming out of that, customers were super happy, and we made no expectation that people would pay for the product that or like that they needed to continue any of that. We just kind of wanted to see what would happen, and we knew it was kind of going to be bumpy and messy as it was. And we've had some good, initial transitions from pilot into paid customers. We have our first revenue coming in. When that when that first like Stripe link hit, I don't know where I was at the time. I definitely was not like ready to celebrate, but I was like, that was a very surreal moment. So like,
Supermarket checkout line. Yeah.
I wish, because then I could turn around and like go get something fun. If it was supermarket checkout line, that would be awesome because I would just like go to,
All
I
of
don't
it's
know, like
gone. All the Stripe money is gone. I'm celebrating with everything on
right.
the cart.
I'm gonna get like a 6 pack of Modelo and like an ice cream sandwich or something like that. I wish I had a more exciting answer than that, but that's the honest answer. So we have transitioned out of that sort of like pilot soft launch thing, and we're in a space that's good where I don't have to wrestle anyone, that we can just focus on sort of experimenting and learning about customer experience. And it's like it's built out for what we do for group therapy. It's centrally located. It checks all the marks. Now what we're really focused on is experimentation in terms of great curriculums and groups that we offer, but also just like customer experience and customer acquisition. So it's like we're in a funny place where it's like if you let it, it can be very meat and potatoes. I'm trying not to let it be very meat and potatoes, and that it's like I still think it's a time to be very stupid um, and very like experimental and like take a lot of risks. And as we were talking a little bit pre-show, it's like I think I have to be constantly reminded and shocked out of the sort of the stasis that can come at this point, which is
Yeah.
that, yeah, you've achieved some small amount of success and you've created something where it is not only revenue generating, but like weeks away from turning a profit. And it's like you can get kind of lazy at that point. And it's like, so this is not me saying, this is not me answering your question by saying like, well, David, I'm in a lazy point. But it is sort of like, we are just trying to like relight the fire that
Yeah.
got us through some hard fight and some like hard work to a point where we had 48 plus people coming in for our therapy pilot and like really enjoying it and like weeping and hugging and like hanging out with each other afterwards. And all this amazing stuff that we saw with people. It's like we need to bring that to the reasonable masses at this point in Los Angeles. So we are on the precipice of like a really good spot, but it's a very overwhelming spot. I mean, it's the most overwhelming moment that I think I've probably ever experienced. And
Was it that same level whenever kind of taking it a step back, whenever
mhm.
you were first starting to look to add people to your team? Because that's a tough one too, because you've got to get those hires right, or if you don't, that has to end quickly. Um,
Yeah,
were those
it's
tough, or
the hiring.
yeah, just the
Um,
process and everything of going through it since they're your first ones.
right. You know, for better or for worse, I try and take advantage of the EQ that I have, which is probably higher than, I mean, if you listen to the average like founder entrepreneur podcast, it's always like cut your EQ down, like give yourself an EQ lobotomy, like be ruthless. And it's like I'm a pretty tough motherfucker, but it's like I have good EQ. So bringing in people and like really glomming on to the people that I really like and the smart people that I come across, that's easy for me. Like that's because it's enjoyable and it's like
yeah,
I try and be, as a child of divorce, I'm hyper vigilant of those things. Um, and so like that part was not super stressful to me. And frankly, like I learned that, talking to customers and like doing customer surveys and like all that stuff is not particularly intimidating either. It's just sort of like the abstract planning of it and the owning of where it goes wrong is really, really hard. Um, and that's sort of where we are now, where it's like I'm walking this tightrope of like, you want to see people coming in the door and you want to see new members coming in and you want to try stuff. But it's also like, I am the one singularly responsible for when like, you know, a dozen new people don't sign up, each week or something like that, right? Like, I don't
right.
really have a set metric like that at the moment, um, because we're not really about like a particular volume. But that is an internal struggle, let's say, right? Like, it's not like one of my teammates is coming up to me and being like, "Hey, did you hit your quota?" Maybe they
Yeah.
should. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to them about that. But that is more the sort of like internal struggle at this point. It's like hypercritical kind of stuff like that.
So if somebody's listening and let's say they're a solopreneur starting to
Hmm.
grow, but also looking to maybe bring on two or three people, they feel like they're at that right time to hire, right time to expand a little bit. Because you've just been there, I mean, what would you tell them? What things should they start to kind of look out for? What things should they trust about themselves? What should that process kind of look like?
First and foremost, like get a piece of paper out and write down every person that you think might be vaguely appropriate for it that you know. Like, I don't care if you currently work at like a gas station or if you're like a Harvard MBA, the process is literally the same. It's like I made a big, long paper, silly, like in my notebook, multi-page list of literally everyone I could think of that I maybe talked to once and just started like reaching out to them. And some of it was like that pick your brain general stuff. Some of that was like, hey, help me, please help me like figure this person out. Like, and then I kind of cross-referenced that with what I actually needed and what I thought I needed, which are two very different things. The list sort of very naturally started to like winnow its way down into something coherent. And then from there, I kind of just like went to LinkedIn and I went to like YC and I went to like every available outlet. And like I think I probably just Googled like where to find co-founder. And this was even, I'm sure if the like people from my accelerator heard this, they'd probably like be blowing their top that I was still Googling that at that point. But you know, I I just was not afraid to like do very basic Googling of like how to find a co-founder, where to find it. And, a lot of it came back to just like, you got to know someone from like that you went to Columbia Business School with. And it's like, okay, well, that's not
That's not me.
applicable for me.
Right.
Um, I went to a third tier art school where most people did not go to class. Um, so that was just not going to work.
Yeah.
But the second and third options were the YC co-founder matching platform. The third was your accelerator cohort, which I had. And the fourth was cold emailing people on LinkedIn. And so I literally did every one of those things day in and day out for weeks and months and just like met with every person. And most of them were inappropriate, not like verbally inappropriate, but like inappropriate for the position.
Right.
Um, some sent me to another person, some were awful, and some I thought were the right person, and they weren't. So it's like I
Mm.
just really just like sat down and met with every single person that would respond to an email that I assumed would be right for the job. It's very much a dating thing because, and maybe this is like a hacky analogy, but like you're going to spend a lot of time with this person, you're going to build a very deep relationship with them, and it's like you kind of need to learn through trial and error what the right person is for you and what isn't. And it took, and maybe this is what they teach you in business school. I don't know. I haven't been there, but it's like it took me a long time to really be informed as to who that person was. And that would not have happened had I not like LinkedIn messaged 1,000 people or like been on the YC co-founder matching platform for a long time or like harangued every person in my accelerator to like, hey, do you know a person that does this? Like, put me in touch with them. So it's like, it's a lot of just like very hardcore emailing, list making legwork. And that may is maybe like a very unflattering, unromantic answer, but a lot of these things have like comfortingly unromantic answers to them. And
Right.
it's like you shouldn't be afraid if your brain is telling you like, oh, that's not a very romantic solution. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like a lot of things that we need to do, like basics that we need to do are considered basics for very legitimate reasons. It's like you are starting from the basics. It's like, so you gotta make a list of names, you gotta email a bunch of people, you gotta have a bunch of bad interviews, and then you have to like totally romance the shit out of like three or four people and have some of them go really poorly. Which,
And it feels like it
yeah,
feels really similar to what you were talking about earlier, where it's just like you have to trust yourself. Like
yeah,
you know the type of person that you want to work with, the type of person that's going to work well with you, the type of person that gets your vision and is on that same train. Like when you're talking, their eyes are lighting up too, and they're like, oh, and this, and you're brainstorming together, and then all of a sudden that energy feels like it's not just all in you, and you're trying to get it to the other person, but they're actually opening up, and now both of those energies are just collective. So I mean, I
yeah,
love that. I love the way that that is.
and I learned a good lesson in college, right? Um, Back then, I don't even actually I don't if I'm honest, I don't even know why I decided to get this like particular bug up my ass, but like I think someone in my freshman dorm was like, "Hey, do you know that they used to have a radio station here?" And I was like, "We should have one again." And then like I was such like a young annoying piece of shit that like the second the first like college administrator was like, "No, why?" I was like, "You gotta tell me no." And it's like so I just gathered like a group of equally foolish acolytes around me, and we just like spent the rest of our college life like making this a reality and like forcing this on college administrators who are probably just like trying to earn their bread and go home, but I would just like come busting into their office. But it's like I really learned then that it's like you need to find those equally like ridiculous people that are gonna just kind of commit to something stupid. There's no like were people getting a bad education before we showed up and like started an internet radio station and like created one of the first, mobile streaming platform, like did all this silly shit that doesn't really matter? No, like people were still getting the same education before and after, but like it gave a very select group of people something to coalesce around and be ultra passionate about. And like be a unit together about. And it's like we have a bunch of incredible memories from that. And it's like that would not have happened had we not been 7 or 8 people who absolutely wanted to spend way too much time together. I was probably around those people more than I was around like the people that were quote unquote like I was like in my friendship squad with. But that's the same thing as now, right? It's
Yeah.
like these people are people I absolutely have to be able to like have a conversation with on a daily basis, not feel uncomfortable like making mistakes in front of, even if I'm technically the boss. Um, and that I can, in a healthy way, have like a intimate, like conversational relationship with. And it's like if the people you find you can't meet those standards, that's a very high standard, but it's an important standard to have. That
Yeah.
is the standard that they need to meet. And it's like, I'm sorry if that is a very intimidating standard to set for people who are like have a pen and paper in hand right now going, oh shit, what did he just say? That is 100% the standard you have to set for these people. And if you don't, you will screw yourself over. Like
Yep.
you read a lot of these things about how bad partnerships create bad companies. 100%. Like that is just the reality of these things.
Man, you nailed it. I mean, I agree with all of those things. You know, I mean, you have to be able to work with them. You have to be able to be creative with them, talk with them about every single thing that happens within the business, but also vulnerable for when one of you makes a mistake. Yeah, all of that. Well, Daniel, this has been
If yeah.
fantastic. I mean, how can people keep up with you and follow all the amazing things that you guys are doing?
So first and foremost, if you live in the LA area, come on down and get your first month 50% off.
Heck
And
yeah.
just simply go to hellogroupchat.com to grab that for yourself. Other than that, we are on all of the social media platforms as Hello Group Chat. And please follow along as we are helping a lot of people feel better about themselves.
Man, I will make sure that all of that is linked in the show notes so that people can find where
Thank
you
you.
guys are located, check you guys out. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're seeing this short,
Yeah.
make sure you check out all of that. Um,
Yeah.
Great stuff that you guys are doing. I'll make sure that everybody can find you guys easily. But
Awesome.
this was a pleasure, and I thank you so much for your time. I love what you guys are doing, and it's so needed.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a comment below and don't forget, hit that subscribe button. Until next time.